So, weird confession. I recently accidentally took a relationship quiz, and I accidentally took it because I thought I was going to read an article, and when I clicked on it, it was a quiz. I was like, well, whatever. It's about relationships, and these things can be fun, right? So I took it, and when I finished it, it tallies your results, and you can take a look at them. And I found a very familiar response came out of taking this quiz. It was true that out of all the many, many characteristics you could have, that one stood just a little bit above the rest. But then a bunch of characteristics were really close together. So if my highest was 12, there was like 5 or 6 of them that scored at 9 and 8, and then one that scored at like a 6. So tons and tons of, yeah, you're pretty much like this, but actually a lot of them, you're kind of needy in all these various ways, and then there's one that you don't care about very much. And I feel like that tends to be my story. I teach, and I think it tends to be other people's stories. I teach a lot of personality type classes, and people will often feel that way. There'll be one that stands out, but they relate to a lot of things pretty easily. And so at first glance, I feel like I can look at something like, oh yeah, look, you pretty much want everything, as like a, that just proves it. I'm a totally needy person. It just totally lays it out there, and it's right on paper now, well, on a screen. But I've also read various articles on relationships and why people need relationship, and I feel like I consistently read something very similar. And when I read these, and they're like Psychology Today type articles, things like that, and it'll say things like, yes, you do have needs, and yes, those needs are okay, and yes, you should attend to those needs if you're going to be of any use at all to anybody else. So that feels like a common thread if I start reading other articles. So then some of you may be familiar. There's this wisdom book in the Bible. It's called Proverbs. And some of the sayings, like the ones we'll look at today from chapter 18, are from people like this guy, King Solomon. So King Solomon, he's the third of all the Israelite kings, and he's reported to have a really amazing life. I think it's like 300 wives and 600 concubines, or 900 concubines. It's like amazing, if you can just imagine how much sex this man is having. But it's like, now you. But his reign in Israel, it's notably exceptionally peaceful, right? So his father, David, he's in all these wars, and then he kind of walks into a time of peace, which frees him up to do all kinds of things. Study, experience the finer things in life, and all of that experience for him kind of, I think, plays into his permission to feel like he could write about life. So he writes a couple of books about life. So there's some Proverbs, but then Ecclesiastes is exclusively his. And then there's also this notable moment early on in his life where he asks God for wisdom specifically, and that gets like a lot of praise. Oh yeah, that's a really good thing to ask for. People should totally ask for wisdom. So he's respected in his story on various occasions because people come with these really difficult situations, and he makes a call, a judgment call or a decision that everybody thinks, wow, that's a good one. You did good there. So he's respected because of that. And I think really, if you think about it, what a legacy, because we still look to him today for wisdom, right? I'm going to quote this guy that lived so long ago. So now that being said, not everything in Proverbs is from King Solomon. It's kind of interesting. There's sayings that come from just the surrounding cultures. So they weren't necessarily Israelite or Jewish sayings. They were just cultural sayings that everybody kind of understood. So in our day, that might be things like, look before you leap, right? And we would all understand that to be, okay, I'm going to weigh my decisions before I jump in. So for our purposes, we're going to start at the end of chapter 18. We'll look at verse 24, which says this. One who has unreliable friends soon comes to ruin, but there is a friend who sticks closer than a brother. So friendship, you thought the sermon was going to be about something else, right? Because what's the title? Because needs are real. A regular haunt, because your needs are real. What did you think it was going to be about? Friendship, who knew? Solomon seems to say that friendship is no small thing, that if we don't have friends, we're going to find ourselves in dark spaces pretty quickly. We're going to feel lonely and sad and depressed and misunderstood and even angry and frustrated, right? We're going to come to ruin. But when we have a good friend, they're like family, even better than family maybe. And that isn't to say that family isn't totally awesome, because sayings are not meant to be exhaustive, right? So these are not meant to be the end-all, be-all of any situation. You could absolutely have a great family. But probably we can all relate to at least this idea of what it's like to have a good friend. So I know for me, I think of this woman I used to work with. In relationship to hierarchy, she was actually one of my bosses. So from a work perspective, she didn't owe me anything. If anything, my job was to answer to her. I was the one that owed her something. I needed to meet her needs. But every time I saw her, the first thing that we'd start with is, "Christina, how are you?" And if for any reason I sounded less than content in my response, she would immediately sit down in a chair and say, "What's up? Tell me what's going on." It's like all business stopped. And let me just say, this woman, busy. She had plenty on her plate to do. Her time was precious and her time was limited, and I knew that. And so hopefully I'd be able to say that I was there for her when she really needed it too. And in that way, I think maybe we were experiencing this Proverbs 18:24 friendship, maybe like we were family. We were invaluable to each other in various ways. So I feel like looking back on it, in many ways, she saved me from various feelings of ruin. A few times I would come in and I might say something, "This really happened," and it's a really joyous moment, and it's releasing a lot of stress from my life, and I would start to cry, and she'd be like, "Wow, I can see this is really important to you." And to this day, so we live really far apart now, but I still find her friendship to be just infinitely valuable to me. So maybe each of us needs friends like that, because maybe it's true that we all have needs, and lots of them actually, that we're not one-dimensional people. We're very complex people. And when our needs aren't met, we can easily come to ruin in various ways. So if we dig a little deeper into that idea, I'm going to show you this short film today that Stories by the River recently released. It's called A Regular Haunt, hence the title slide. And it does a pretty good job, I think, of illustrating how quickly not having our needs met can spiral. So take a look with me at A Regular Haunt.